Ladies and gentlemen, when the US president decided to withdraw from Afghanistan, it created an intense evacuation operation from all the allied nations involved in the NATO-led operations in Afghanistan. Since the Afghanistan forces still not was prepared to operate completely on their own, and the leadership abruptly abandoned the country, the Afghan government collapsed. It gave all the government employees no other choice than to leave their positions, and the Afghan forces also laid down their weapons by orders from their leaders, and they went home. It's possible to elaborate more on this issue, but anyway, that is basically what happened. By the end of August 2021, when the last plane left Hamid Karzai airport, there was still some countries who continued to evacuate the local employees, and arrangements were made between the Qatar and the Taliban to make this happen. At the same time, there were many NGOs and initiatives from numerous organizations that tried to save former governmental personnel by extracting them to other countries, and with some success, eventually to a third country that would start processing them for visa and a safe life. The Crisis Response Unit, or CRU, or 222 as it also was named, was built up by the Norwegian Special Forces from 2007 to become a robust special police force who created safety and stability in the Kabul province. As a matter of fact, it was my squadron in the Norwegian Special Forces that started to train this unit, with their commander at that time, Haji Ghulam Dawood, and he was a colonel at that time who later became a general. During their years of operations, the CRU sent many Taliban leaders to prison. They responded to numerous attacks in Kabul together with their Norwegian Special Forces mentors. Since day one of Taliban takeover, there have been a massive hunt for government employees and specific for the special police units. When they are found, they will be tortured and killed. Unfortunately, many has been killed already, and the United Nations has reported, and that's on the web, at least 100 plus former governmental employees have been killed. And that report is a few months old. We are talking about several hundred in total. Taliban are looking for revenge. And even if the former employees don't support the Taliban, they actually do not pose any threat to them as of now. So there is no other reason for the killings than pure revenge. Taliban has, by help from Pakistan, restored much of the biometric database, since all the Special Forces personnel, together with the governmental employees, were validated through that system. The information stored in this system will lead the Taliban to know who they are, and that will make it possible to find these people unless they go into hiding or escape, if possible. The biometric system is spread all over the country with more than 600 systems. So the Taliban has the power to identify the personnel which are within that system. And I also must say, and it's a shame that the ANDS, Afghanistan National Development Strategy, that they leave all the databases and documents in hard copy behind when the government fell. This means that the Taliban now has this in their possession. In this database, they not only have the record of the personnel, but all the families and relations. We expect the number of killed to rise shortly. We are now up to more than 600 killed by the ANDS. As you probably remember from the media, shortly after the takeover by the Taliban, they issued an amnesty to all former employees. But as everything else, this has proven not to be in effect. Now we have hundreds of personnel in hiding inside Afghanistan and in neighboring countries. Families are split up, and people are living under not only the threat from the Taliban, but with no possible income to feed their family and pay their rent if they even still live in a house. When we left the country, we basically made all of our brothers in arms lawless and persona non grata in their own country. With no income and no security, they are living in a prison. Like those I have contact with now, who live in central places, cannot even leave their house. Searches are common on a daily basis and random killings as well. The killings of former Special Forces personnel and high-ranking officials are well documented and is addressed by the United Nations and Human Rights Watch. But still, there is a little support from other governments to address this issue. The Ukrainian war has changed the focus totally, not only in the public opinion, but also in the media. Those countries that established application system to help Afghans and even went out in the media talking about it are not responding in any good way. Norway took out only 115 CRU personnel and around 650 in total. United Kingdom took several thousands, but now there is no response in their application system. Although they now have launched a new initiative, but this focus not on the former governmental security personnel, so it looks like a very narrow path to freedom. I know about personnel who had worked for the British government for a decade and had to flee the country, and still there is no solution in sight. New Zealand, who was in charge for the CRU or 222 for 2.5 years, don't want to help any of the remaining CRU personnel either. And even my own, the Norwegian government, have stated that they will not help any of the 222 personnel left behind. They have stated that in their website. We have seen a change recently where the governments are now focusing more on women, activists, and journalists. I have nothing against these groups, but what about those who have been fighting against the Taliban for years? Why should they suddenly become banned by the European countries? We now have a situation where the people lost a job overnight, cannot support the family, and face the risk of being captured and killed. This has created a lack of food, also overnight, and families are suffering since their father or mother no longer have a job where they can earn money to support even their basic needs. We have a situation where it's pouring money into Ukraine, and the people from Ukraine are entering the European countries with a minimum of paperwork. And they're even allowed to start working for a living instantly as they arrive the country of destination. This is a discrimination of the Afghan people who face starvation and possible death by the Taliban. Since the Taliban, at this pure existence, is nothing but a criminal dictatorship that uses religion as its excuse while they actually are strangling their own population. From my years working with the CRU, we trained female operators in driving, shooting, and investigating procedures. We did this so we could behave respectful when searching women and their belongings on operations. We also have female operators left behind. We trained the Afghans to do a proper job when they were acting within the population, searching for the bad guys that posed a threat to the public. I have heard that some high-ranking officials have stated that the Afghans fought for their own country, not for us nor NATO. That's why we do not have any obligation to help them. I will put this in another perspective. We entered Afghanistan with a massive military force to eliminate the threat to America and to the European countries. We now see that the Taliban and the partners, Al-Qaeda, are traveling freely around to the European countries, and we should be aware of that it's likely that at some stage they will pose a threat to our society. The Taliban will not be able to contain Al-Qaeda nor the ISKP. Neither do we, since we have no presence in the country. To do the job we were set to do when we were in Afghanistan was the help from the locals Afghan, so also was supposed to safeguard their own population when the Allied support was no longer needed. That's why I strongly believe we have a moral obligation to help these people still living under threat in Afghanistan. NATO stated that it took out all their employees, but that is not true. They only transferred the people who were on duty, and those who were at home, even with valid papers, were left behind. When I realized that NATO had the people left behind and approached them, they just stated that each member nation should stand up and safeguard its people. But it seems like the member countries do not have the intention of doing that. NATO must respect their obligation to fulfill the transfer of the people left behind, and even those who addresses this to a member state of the NATO alliance faces a long road to a possible rescue. I hope that our politicians, no matter which country they belong to, realize that we put the Afghan people, and in particular those who work for the former government, at severe risk by abandoning them like we did. I think it's a huge difference between when you decide not to interfere in another country's internal problem, then do you on the other hand do it and then suddenly withdraw without any working system to take over. NATO and the whole Western community have responsibility for this situation. We must stand up and use our moral compass the way it should be used. By establishing procedures so those who are in need will be taken care of. We can see that there is a resistance movement that is increasing, and I think it's natural given the situation they are facing. But also it creates this dilemma with retaliation from the Taliban. Most of the former government employees laid down their weapons because they were told to and had no strong leadership to back them up. They just want peace. I personally think we should not blame the resistance now emerging, but see how we can, within our possible means, support the population of Afghanistan. It's very unlikely that any person who had nothing to do with the former government and minding his or her business will be pursued in any way, but without doubt, the general life of the Afghan people have worsened a lot since the Taliban took over the country. That's why we need to immediately establish transfer possibilities and find a way to help the Afghan people with their needs. To all of those who are skeptic to Muslims and Afghans in particular, I will say this. Since my first deployment to the country in 2003, I met many local Afghans that despite we have different religions, different languages, we have worked together believing in pretty much the same values. I have experienced the special police making decisions that were not for their own benefit, but for the cause of right and wrong. I look upon my friends in the CIU as a resource to any community they will be a part of, as long as we give them good mentoring at arrival. Good mentoring will be evident to a good integration for those we are bringing to safety. I want you all to keep in mind that several nations have established different resettlement programs for Afghans at risk and Afghans who were employees during the operations in Afghanistan, but even stated on the governmental websites, it does not apply into any valid application system as I see it. The United Kingdom have their website without anyone replying. The Germans have apparently made arrangements for former employees, especially for those who work for the GIZ, but it seems to be a long way to connect, although the new initiative will hopefully be working, but yet to see. We hope to facilitate for a good transfer for people at risk. My own country, Norway, have stated they will not support any resettlement except through an application which is so limited that it will not work for people under threat. New Zealand have also stated they will not take any responsibility for these issues, even they were a part of the coalition. This, ladies and gentlemen, is nothing but a shame for all of us. That's why we must make it known that we all are being fooled by different initiatives that really doesn't work. Choosing not to engage in these issues could backfire to the whole European community. Of course, I know there's a war going on in Ukraine, but preventing something is often far better than reacting when it happens. Thank you for your attention.